Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another week and with it another exciting night of intense top split racing action in the one and only iRacing official Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing, and proudly sponsored by the sim racing hardware provider CONSPIT. Here we are then once again for another brilliant top split broadcast. It's the 2025 Season 4 campaign, and in week 8 of 12, we have made our way to the United States of America for a countryside classic at Road America. 4.04 miles in length and consisting of a whole variety of corners, it is a circuit which sees condensed corner sequences contradicted by extended straights, and therefore it's all about the best exit out of the last corner in the sequence and the full throttle barrage all the way to the next heavy braking zone. For those who are brave at Road America, they may just be able to beat their rivals on the brakes and prove themselves extra consistent, but those who get it wrong, they may find themselves very quickly sliding off circuit or sliding down the pack. And here we are today as part of our regular schedule to see who exactly can prove themselves to be the ultimate maestro of the Porsche 992 GT3 Cup Car racing machine. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side. You're tuning in right now on YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX141TX or Tour T Paul Walsh, and you can be tuning in there. And indeed, you'll be joining the company of many a spectator week in, week out. And it's so good to have so many of you tuning in as always. And don't be shy, feel free to say hi as we get ready to go racing. Speaking of which, our schedule for tonight, as we do focus on the 21:45 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC top split session on this Wednesday evening. Well, as we can see, in approximately 4 minutes' time, we're making our way to the grid for 12 laps of intense racing, and qualifying is just currently underway in the background. There's plenty of cloud afoot. There's also the slight chance of rain in the background as well, particularly in the race, and therefore that could spur on some intrigue later on in the racing today. But as we make our way into this week of racing, let's recap the story so far and what we've got lying in wait today. Because as we can see, taking a look at our schedule, well, last time out, it was at the Autodromo International Enzo Dino Ferrari at the Imola circuit in Italy, where we got to see plenty of drama from lights out to checker flag, where it be a major incident into turns 2, 3 and 4 at the Tamburello chicane, or fighting further throughout the field over the distance. Well, those are able to stay clear of the drama, including none other than pole sitter through to winner, Heidino Mamassi, who in the end took victory via a sizable margin after taking pole position by almost 2 tenths of a second. And despite early pressure from Luis Felipe Calderon and Luis Glanier, he was able to roar away as the two of them fought over second place. And in the end, it would be Glanier who held off Felipe Calderon for that second place spot. But will we see some new names on top today? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. Because after today, we'll be making our way down under to Australia in a week's time. And on the 12th of November, we'll continue the story at the Mount Panorama circuit. And there will be proof of who's the king of the mountain rather than the king of the countryside. But staying in the here and now, in the present, as we come into this week of racing, well, let's talk a little bit about our circuit. Because, of course, it is the full layout of Road America. Located near the village of Elkhart Lake in Sheboygan County of the US state of Wisconsin, it is a circuit that has withstood the test of time and one of a very limited number of circuits around the globe that has remained in its original configuration and the exact same layout over its extensive 70-plus year history. Indeed, the layout you see here today is exactly the layout the circuit opened up with, and it is a much-loved and cherished circuit, not just nationally, but around the globe, in the fact that wherever you go at this circuit, there is a spot for spectators, and it's absolutely loved by spectators and drivers alike as a result. But at its core, 14 corners, many extended straights, and all these corners have a variety of hairpins through to sweepers, and also we do have a couple of double apex bends, such as the carousel at turns 9 and 10, and also the run all the way through Canada Corner at turn 12 through to 13 and 13A. But as the drivers get set, a big thank you to iRacing.com for their brilliant simulator and the fantastic track mats that come with it, and indeed, a two-dimensional image can only tell so much of the story of the circuit, and we'll articulate more of it when we do look circuit side. But before we go racing, a quick reminder of the rules, of course, because we're not allowed to go racing without rules. And as we can see, this is the Open Setup Series, where drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every week of racing. They've got to put in the right amount of fuel and get the tyres up to the right pressures. If they don't, they may fall behind. As the race itself, well, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is currently underway and due to conclude soon, with the race commencing via a standing start, as is the tradition of the iRacing Porsche Cup. Drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 more instant points, and should they get to 25, they'll be disqualified. qualified, and that's the only time we'll see them come into the pits unless they've got repair work on the car. But there's no pit stops in these races. They're short sprints, and that's what makes the racing so intense and exciting. But back to circuit side we go, and as the qualifying session comes gradually to a close, well, let's talk a little bit about where our drivers stand in terms of our strength for field today. Well, in terms of our iRatings for the strength for field, we do have a strength for field as of this week of 3,762. So it's not quite the lowest we've seen this season, but it does come relatively close to the lowest that we did see at the Bend back in week number 3, which was the first race where damp conditions were observed in our strength for field broadcast, and we're seeing them again here today. As you can see, some small splashes of water on the circuit at the moment, albeit we've had some rainfall in the build-up to the racing today, but we haven't had rain in the practice session, nor have we in this qualifying session. And that's going to only add intrigue here because, of course, many of our drivers will be wondering whether they need to go on the slick or the wet compound. And it does seem as though Taylor Wallace is the only driver right now opting to give the wet compound a try, whereas everybody else is going for the slick. But they've got to avoid those puddles, as otherwise they might be gliding wide or going around very quickly. But a wonderful array of iRatings here once again, and we do have some big names returning to the grid, including first and foremost there, our provisional pole sitter of Luis Glania, and well, right now he's been chased down as much as possible by Mauricio Lamberto, who we've just seen there come to a close, and he completes his final qualifying lap, as has Jan Gutslav, who makes his debut in the Top Split broadcast series as of today, and Gareth Higgins is back once again. Our number 2 driver, the second highest iRating in this field. Well, he's currently sitting in 4th place, but coming to the end of a flying lap. His final flying lap here, and can he perform a bit of a miracle? Can he get himself onto that front row? Well, we're not too far away from finding out whether he can do so today, and we look forward to seeing what he can do, given the fact that he's been off the podium for a little bit of time recently. He's normally been Mr. 2nd or 3rd place, but he's gradually relegated himself to becoming Mr. 4th place in a way. But hopefully for Higgins, we'll see him back on the podium, should he be able to stay one step ahead of the pack. But as he crosses the timeline, heads towards the line then, he puts himself on provisional pole. Lovely lap there for Gareth Higgins, a 209.824. It's a 10th faster than what Luis Glania has been able to achieve, and therefore he's feeling confident, as meanwhile Philip Hammer has only gone 10th place there. Our highest iRated driver there, the pole promotion esports driver, who's had some misfortune in recent rounds. He'll be starting 10th. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the checker flag comes out. Qualifying is complete. It's time to make our way to the grid then for our one and only race today, and 12 laps are just around the corner. So as they make the way onto the grid, this is how our drivers will line up for our race in this Strength for Field Top Split broadcasted race for Week 8 of the 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing at Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. And as we can see, Gareth Higgins takes his maiden pole position for Team 75 Bernard by Sim RC, and he'll be joined on the front row of the grid for Britain by the German of Luis Glania. Starting in 3rd place, just behind, we'll have Maurizio Lamberto, who once again demonstrates some brilliant pace at qualifying for SART XMC, and he is ahead there of none other than debutant Jan Gutslav. We'll then see from the German back to the Briton of Carl McGuinness there for pole sim racing, ahead of another new name on the grid today, Matt Sparrell, who starts in 6th place. Well done to Matt, puts himself only 2 tenths behind McGuinness, and well, McGuinness will be very happy that 5th place, as will Sparrell with the 3rd row of the grid. Starting 7th, we do have the Portuguese driver there, of Francisco Verdasca, and he'll be joined on that row by Yaroslav Tomiki, who makes his return to the grid once more. We have in 9th place there Ferreira Almeida, and he'll be joined on that final row of the top 10 by Philip Hammer for pole promotion esports. Starting in 11th place, meanwhile, we can see it's going to be Max Angles, who starts there just ahead of fellow American countryman of Matt Mosby. And then we will have Christian Karlsen on the 7th row of the grid, ahead of Nicholas Stanev, who is very eager to know today when exactly we would be going racing. And well, he makes his debut on the grid, and good luck to Nicholas there. It's great to see him tuning in earlier on the season and on the grid today, making his debut. Matt Strand starts 15th there for Ice Cold Racing, powered by Maxim Racing, ahead of Oliver Clarke. And then we will have on the 9th row of the grid Jakub Sauer, ahead of Philip Schmitz. And then completing your top 20, it's going to be Josephine Becker and Lee Belden. Then outside the top 20, we've still got a couple of rows to go, of which on the penultimate row of the grid, we have Taylor Wallace and Caleb Aguilar. And then we have on the final row of the grid, Bartos Goenica and Westenberger from the US of A, who rounds off your 24 car starting order. But that's the grid, ladies and gentlemen. Let's head down to the front, because it's time for the lights. And who is going to come away victorious? Well, it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5 red lights. drop the hammer. It's go time as they roar the way away, and Gareth Higgins immediately looks to get a great start. He makes his way out of the stable, and Luis Glanier right behind him there. But as they all make the way up towards turn of 1, Maurizio Lamberto has had the better start of the top 3. It gets very close there to Glanier into turn 1, but is he going to be able to look for a move? The answer is no, he's not, as they now make the way onwards down towards turn number 3. But as they do, all these drivers right now taking it tentatively there with the fact they've got slick tyres that are cold, and we do have a damp road racing surface. We can see there Velasquez up the inside of Christian Karlsen, making a quick move there. Lovely move from the number 11 driver, albeit he's got to gain some place. He's lost early on, a very poor start from him, but he's on the recovery drive as Karlsen now tries to push him onwards. But down towards turn number 5 they come, and as they do, well, Karlsen with him there. Philip Hammer trying to put some pressure on, but it's Ferrer Almeida who's putting him under pressure as they enter the braking zone, but he hold that outside line as Luis Glanier up the inside of Gareth Higgins. Higgins elbowed out there onto the runoff area, but he will survive it for now, and Higgins gets the better exit there heading up the hill, but Glanier is still there with him as our leaders now make the way into the tight and technical twisty middle sector. And coming on down here, well, Higgins holding on by a hair's width for the moment, as meanwhile further back we do now have a start of a split appearing in the field with Oliver Clarke there chasing after Max Angles, but between them they do have Francisco Verdasco who's fighting hard here, and right now Clarke trying to hold on to 13th place and really putting himself in a position to go as defensive as possible. But through the carousel they go, and as they come down, well, we can see Matt Strand there looking around the outside. He's had a reasonable start, holding on to his 15th place starting position. No progress but no regression either, and that's a good way to start the race. We had a bit of drama for Taylor Wallace, which we'll try and get a replay of when we can, but meanwhile the leaders up front, it's all going crazy here because they come charged up towards Canada Bend. Too wide they come. Higgins on the outside, Glanier on the inside, and onto the brakes they'll go, but who's going to be the braver of the breakers here? They both just about survive it, sliding around there in the wet, and we can see Glanier there making his way ahead for now by nose, but into 13A they come, and Glanier does take the lead of the race as Gareth Higgins now looks to hold on. We have had an instant further back. In fact, we've had several drivers go off the road there. Cole McGuinness has been caught up. He's been escorted all the way to the runoff area. I'm not quite sure how he's got there, but he rejoins, but he drops all the way down to 18th place. Replay of that will be coming up, and meanwhile we can look back to the front of the field because Luis Glanier leads this race. Gareth Higgins runs second. Philip Hammer has snuck his way into 3rd place, but Matt Sparrell and Reed Ferreira Almeida are fighting hard over 4th. Sparrell's going to take that position for now and get ahead, but you can see that Almeida tucking right and back behind him and looking for an opportunity. And then we have Yaroslav Tamiki in 6th place ahead of Christian Karlsen, with Nicholas Stanev, who started all the way down in 14th place. Well, he's a quick starter. He's up into 8th ahead of Jan Gutzlaff, and then it's Max Angles who completes your top 10. But that's how it stands currently. Oh, goodness me, that's getting a little bit tender hooks there between the two drivers. Damage on the rear there on Oliver Clarke's car as well, so he's had a shunt on the rear, but right now battling hard with Angles, and in fact that's Angles' car that's got the damage, not Clarke's. My apologies. And Angles has definitely had a shunt on the rear of the car, and that may not be helping rear stability. But right now, trying to keep strong and stable in 6th place is Yaroslav Tamiki, but with that pressure from Christian Karlsen, as Karlsen slides loose of the puddle there, coming through turn number 5 under braking, but he does get it back together for now, as there's been misfortune, I'm hearing in my ear, from Caleb Aguila, who's in the pit lane with damage to the car, and well, there's a bit of a story there. We're going to have to unpick that one as soon as we possibly can. But so far, with 24 starters, one has had to retire, but the rest are all pushing onwards, and with plenty more to come between our drives between now and the end of the race, no doubt about it. Maurizio Lamberto as well, he started all the way up in the running order in 3rd place. He's down in 19th, but he's going to look his way around Lee Belden here as he comes down into the braking zone for turn number 8. Lovely move there, classic move from the SART XMC machine, and another place regained. But as things fall silent for a brief moment, we take a look back at some of the major moments from the start of the race. Now this was the race start first from Mosby, who as he got his way away, well, very quickly found himself out on the grass there. Mosby really struggling off the line. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but he had to take to the grass, and well, in doing so lost a lot of places, but that's completely unexpected. So that was Mosby's race going backwards before it went forwards. Quite sure what exactly happened, but he fell all the way to the back of the running order. Then we have this for Jakub Sauer on the open lap. This was at Canada Corner, where I think there was quite a bit of drama, and well, it was the start of a sequence of dramatic events. All the drivers there sliding under braking, and well, made his way into the puddle. So did Bartos Guernica. They both stepped wide there. Meanwhile, what happened to Kelly Aguilar? Well, Matt Mosby also went off the road there, and this was Kelly Aguilar, who was towards the very back of the field as well, and I suspect he's also going to suffer the same fate. Yes, he does. They all got outfoxed there by a small puddle. Oh, no, no, no. That's Matt Mosby into the side of him there. That's what we didn't see. And that's why they all went straight on there. There was plenty of drama between them and a nightmare moment. Meanwhile, we had this for Kyle McGuinness. He was in contact side by side there with Lamberto. So the two of them came together going up the hill. I'm not quite sure how that started, but we've seen how it ended. And the two drivers escorted each other off the road. So that explains some of the big moments from our opening lap of the racing. But we come back to the live racing now, and as we do, well, your leader, Luis Glania, is pulling away a little bit with Gareth Higgins in hot pursuit. It does seem as though these two right now found some magic in terms of the pace, as we do have difficulty for Taylor Wallace, who's had to come into the pit lane due to damage on the car, I do believe, and, well, therefore our two leaders now starting to abscond with this, as meanwhile Philip Hammer sitting in third. Well, he's definitely had one of the best starts of everybody, and I think he survived all that drama he saw in front of him, plus also a good start. And well, for Philip Hammer, you can never rule him out, to be fair, because he does find a magical way of making some great progress. But as they head onwards, we do have a question there from Grill Pixels, who we say hello to, and also Fabian HD, both of them cheering on Carl McGuinness, and wonder if we can get an alternative angle of the McGuinness-Maurizio Lamberto accident. And indeed, I think we might be able to. We'll see what we can do for you guys and girls, because we do have a couple more replays being queued up here, and where we can, we will get you that on-board footage. But meanwhile, we just stay transfixed here to the battle live between Maria Ferreira Almeida and Jaroslav Tamiki, and Tamiki on the attack. But can he find a way to get that move? The answer is not quite at Canada Corner right now. As we are speaking to the man who we're going to get a replay of shortly. Carl McGuinness here battling hard with Josephine Becker. Looking to go up the inside here. He's got to watch out for the puddles, however. Brakes nice and early in anticipation. Becker on the outside. Small bit of contact between the two of them. Becker slides wide. Now, was he pushed slightly? That's the question. We don't have an answer to that. What we do see is the Becker drops behind both Westerberger and also Philip Schmitz. And Berger moves all the way up from 24th now to 13th place. He's had a really good start to this race. Here's the Modelo machine. And the American driver right now hoping for a bit more there, as that's going to be Becker running out very wide. The car being pulled in the puddle as he comes out the final corner, but here they go across that timeline, and Berger and Schmidt side by side here. It's going to be 2 by 2 onto lap number 4, and well, from them they're fighting on 13th place, but it means so much more to them. Schmitz is going to be up the inside here, Berger on the right of your picture, Schmitz on the inside on the left, and here comes Lamberto as well. Dives under braking here. He's not an Olympic swimmer, but he'll feel like one after that, and as he comes out of the corner, lovely move from Maurizio Lamberto. He's on the recovery drive as well. He's chasing after Carl McGuinness. He wants to get back at him, but meanwhile Westerberger on the outside there. Now Josephine Becker up his inside, and suddenly what's 2 places gained becomes 3 places lost there for the number 20 driver. He'll just tuck back in as Jan Gutslav now in the Lightning McQueen 95 machine looks for an opportunity to battle him, and down towards the braking zone they come. But can he get the move here? The answer is yes, no, maybe. We're about to find out rather than not know. Up the inside he goes under braking. Does he get stopped in time? Yes, he does, as Berger there just takes a small puddle, goes wide, as does Philip Schmidt. It's going to be 3 wide up the hill, but suddenly it's 2 wide as Josephine Becker's on the inside. Becker's going to go for the move here. Becker knows exactly where to put the car, and well, as he does so, place gains there in the Studio Ghibli machine. But as they come down in towards turn 7 and 8, well, absolutely brilliant battling between them, and well, more battling to come. Jaroslav Tamiki battling with Nicholas Stanev, as Stanev has very silently made his way up the order here, while the biggest gainers since the start of the race, 7 places gained, started 14th, up to 7th place, and now fancies his chances a little bit more. As meanwhile, we get a further replay of what was the McGuinness and Lamberto accident, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, as we do come back to that footage. So this was Carl McGuinness making his way up the hill, and in fact we only catch that one angle. Can we get a better angle of it? I think we're going to try to hear from another driver's perspective, and the answer is yes, we can slightly, and it does look as though there, from a slightly alternate view, that Lamberto was up the inside there of McGuinness. Now, it's not to point the finger at Lamberto. We don't know if McGuinness came across and cut off his nose, but Lamberto was eager to make the move on the inside there through 13 into 13A, and McGuinness looked to defend as he turned in, and the question mark would be to a steward who gave the right amount of room and how much overlap was there. But we don't have the most polite camera angles, but that explains what happened to him a little bit more. It was a side-by-side attempt there from Maurizio Lamberto on Carl McGuinness. McGuinness would perhaps argue that he did have the lead into the corner. Meanwhile, Lamberto would argue that he'd made it alongside. But meanwhile, whilst that was happening in the replay, we come to a replay here. So it goes very well for Josephine Becker. Ran out wide coming out of turn number 14. Ooh! Just missing the tyre barrier there at the pit entry by a hair's width, and in the end surviving that one. And I think for Joseph Becker, if he's used up his 9 lives as a cat, well, he won't get away with it another time. But back to your live racing we come. These wet conditions are definitely making it very challenging for all our drivers to try and survive and struggle along here. And well, we're definitely seeing right now that whilst it is a drying circuit and the slick tyre is the right tyre to be on, those puddles, if you step into them, particularly in the braking zones or trying to get traction out of the corner, you'll find yourself going sideways very quickly as Lamberto on the inside again as Nicholas Stanev goes to turn in. I need to figure out that actually there's no way through, and Stanev has lost multiple places since we last looked to. He's dropped off the circuit and dropped a long way down from what was a battle at the time for 7th place and 6th place, in fact, with Christian Karlsen, and now he's dropped all the way down to 11th. And we do have a quick replay to explain that. And yeah, so Tamiki as well has been involved in a bit of an altercation. I think both drivers may have come together. So here's the replay. This was Yaroslav Tamiki, who at the time was ahead of Stanev in towards Canada corner. Under braking, Stanev went for it, slid loose. Oh no! Oh, you could see that coming from a mile away. Once he went to that inside line and the car started to slide around, there was no other story than Stanev making that contact. And the on-board perspective from Nicholas Stanev was like this. And just listen in. And you could see it there at first. Looked to the inside, thought, right, I've got this move under braking. And then suddenly, as soon as he hit the first bit of standing water, the car snapped loose. And at that point, he tried to downshift as quickly as he could, but he couldn't get the car stopped. It turned into a car on ice, essentially. Very easy mistake to make. And I think Nicholas Stanev will immediately be apologising to his rival after the end of the race and point out, look, I went for it. I picked the wrong place to go for it. These things happen in these changing conditions. And, well, I think he'll own up to that one. As meanwhile, Yaroslav Tamiki, in the heat of the moment, understandably, there might be a few swear words underneath his helmet, but that's the way it goes in motorsport, and particularly when you do have a circuit that is changeable, you are going to have instances like that, even for the very best drivers out here, because of course they're pushing it to the limit over a very limited race distance, but little mistakes can have big consequences. But meanwhile, Philip Hammer, and a good spot there from Grill Pixels in the YouTube chat, saying he's not going very fast, is our third place man, and you'd be absolutely spot on, good sir, because our number one driver right now, well, he is lapping at the best part of 1.3 seconds slower than Clanny and Higgins, the leaders, and Matt Spurrell, meanwhile, is 0.3 of a second faster based on the previous lap. Spurrell right now is definitely putting on a turn of pace here as he comes down the hill in towards turn 5. And what's it going to be here as he makes his way up behind? The answer is not close enough this time, as meanwhile Matt Strand battling up the inside there, Francisco Verdasca. Verdasca there goes to the switchback, seeing that the puddles are starting to go away at this lower portion of the circuit. But the problem is right now Matt Strand had too much pace there and managed just to sneak up the inside. Carl McGuinness, we jump on board with a man who's recovered to 9th now after running for quite some time inside the top 10 and then falling out of it, but now back into it once again. Indeed, he's like a yo-yo right now. He doesn't know whether to go down or up. And as he makes his way in towards turn number 8, well, the wipers come on just to clear the spray when there's a little bit, but otherwise there's no rain falling at the moment. But we do have a very low chance of rain towards the end of the race, potentially in the final 3 to 4 laps. The rain may come, and when it does, it's going to be relatively light, as I've been informed. But the weather forecast may not always be 100% accurate as they make their way up towards the very fast sweeping right-hander here. And as they do, will Carl McGuinness right now lift off the throttle there, knowing that if this was clear conditions and not wet, he'd be as close as possible to full throttle. But right now, that dirty air as well, he doesn't want to take the risk, as get it rolled there and you're into the barriers very quickly. Under braking here, these drivers right now 9. There's no real other way to go for a move unless you go all in, but the risks there are you hit a bit of water and you slide loose, as we did see for what was our drivers a little bit earlier on, where it was that attempt being made by Stanev and it all went wrong. McGuinness right now keeping the pressure on Verdasca as Verdasca gets it slightly out of line now under braking to turn 14. Strand, meanwhile, still tempting fate by running on the exit curve in there, but he thinks he's got a good line, and over the crest they come then. And right now McGuinness, he's got a lot of pace at the corners, but he doesn't have the pace of the straights. Verdasca, meanwhile, I think they've set up the number 11 car here to have a lot less rear wing than its rivals, because that is flying on the straights as he looks up at the inside into turn number 1. And Francisco Verdasca right now, he's taking a gamble by setting up the car with a lot less rear wing, but it is working for him as Strand runs a bit wide. McGuinness gets the momentum here, goes to the grass. McGuinness has to back off at the end. He can't overtake on that grass. It's going to be like a swamp out there, and in the end has to bring himself back together. But as he does so, he's going to be back in the tow here, and Strand right now to make his car 3 whips wide, as you have got Nicholas Stanev closing on the back of this and roaring the way on down in towards turn number 5. Well, these drivers right now all so close together here, and at any moment I suspect it could be all nip and tuck and change. Under the brakes there, Strand stays to the outside, but meanwhile Verdasco right up the inside there, throws the car in for the move, manages to get stopped at a dime. Karl McGuinness is there, and Nicholas Stanev completely misses brake marker and goes straight on there. So as a result, Stanev falls back now, but he'll look to try and get involved as quickly as he can. As meanwhile, whilst all that fight is going on in front, Westenberger, well, he's currently hold on to 11th place. Bester red ahead of Philipp Schmitz, and Schmitz right there with him. Remember, these two drivers were also making some great progress earlier on, albeit Berger is the more consistent driver, and Schmitz meanwhile has got to try and get himself back into the flow and rhythm. We have had another retirement from this race from Maurizio Lamberto. Not quite sure how he's ended up in that retirement. We haven't got any footage to explain, but the car has been taken to the pits and won't be seen anymore in this race. So we do have our second retiree after difficulties for Caleb Aguilar, who ended up in the barrier at Canada corner after a lot of drives slid off to the gravel. But with the loss of 2, we've still got 22 racing out there. Everybody on the lead lap as it currently stands. Jan Gutslav, meanwhile, under pressure as they come through the quick right-hander with Oliver Clarke right behind him. And will Clarke go for the move here? He begun at the kink, coming in towards Canada corner here. He thinks about it, but then realises, no, there's no grip on that inside line. You're going to have to wait until you get to the start-finish straight. He's learned his lesson, as have multiple drivers here. The fact there's too much of a risk, as Matt Mosby thinks about it once again and then recognises, no, that's not going to work there, as the wonderful colourful machinery of Matt Mosby in the 21 makes his way up the hill. And right now, if he's not winning the race, he's definitely getting eyes there on the anime livery of the car hailing from Japan. But coming in towards turn number 14, he waits his turn as Oliver Clarke and Jan Gutslav, they roar the way down, and here comes Clarke on the inside then in towards turn number 1. It's a dead heat as they cross the timing line. They've still got another 5 laps to go, but for Oliver Clarke, he'll outpace his rival here into the braking zone for turn number 1 and think he's got it done. Karl McGuinness, meanwhile, he's under pressure from Nicholas Stanev, who's caught up to him, and McGuinness has fallen away from Strand and Verdasco over the last couple of laps, and things seem to have taken a turn to step backwards. But speaking of another turn, well, Lewis Glanier, your leader, is now 6 seconds clear of Gareth Higgins, and we do have a replay to explain exactly how that gap has built out, because Higgins has had a major off that has taken some time for him to rejoin. That replay is coming up shortly, but we stay here right now with McGuinness versus Nicholas Stanev. Stanev close, not close enough how to look for a move, as meanwhile Matt Strand has picked up a slowdown for too much of the apex being cut at turn number 5, and that's a bit of an odd one. But Strand, to be fair, perhaps just trying to go for that switch back again, but switching back way too early. He's very quick as Matt Strand through there, but even the quickest sometimes makes big mistakes. But make no mistake, as he comes down, that's going to put him back into the throes of McGuinness as he serves his slow down there quite tactically in towards turn number 8. Hold up, we've lost somebody. That's Francesco Verdasco who rejoins. He emerges from stage right on your picture. He went straight on at turn number 8, and suddenly what was looking to be a comfortable 7th place is now relegated to a 10th place, and he's going to get back right into the fight. But speaking of fights going the wrong way, for Gareth Higgins, this was what happened to your 2nd place man only moments ago. And in fact, I believe it may have been at that very same corner. Onto the brakes he went, and as he did so, the rear of the car stepping loose slightly and then facing a wall of understeer there. The car had two minds. The rear end wanted to come round, the front end wanted to go straight on, and I think in the end he might have forced the front end to go straight in order to stop the rear coming around with oversteer. So I think Gareth Higgins having to pick the better of the worst options there and doing a very good job. But this then happened to Francesco Verdasco at the same corner only a few seconds later on the next lap. And under braking, went all in, carried a lot of momentum, and just went straight on. So repeated to Gareth Higgins, albeit that was understeer there and too much confidence, whereas Higgins had a rear end that slid loose on him. But meanwhile, back to live racing, and Philip Hammer has had to come into the pit lane. He crawls up pit road, and as he does so, I think Hammer's had a moment with the wall only moments ago. We're going to replay that coming up, but meanwhile, there's change, and there's a wounded car. Matt Sperrell is going very slowly. I think Sperrell and Hammer may have come to blows. Luis Glanier, by the way, has had an off track, so that's brought him back closer to Higgins by a couple of tenths. So there's all change of foot at the front. They're all struggling out there at the moment. I think the confidence is growing from the drivers, and I think the circuit is warming up. The water is now starting to shift, but the problem is our drivers' confidence is evolving more quickly than the circuit is. So they're all starting to think they can go faster, only then to suddenly realise going quicker is not a good idea here unless you're willing to risk it all. And those who are risking it all are finding they very quickly lose it all, as Nicholas Stanev makes his way past Matt Strand and Karl McGuinness follows him through. With Strand, there goes deep at turn number 5. Francesco Verdasco tries to go around the outside into turn 6. That's never happening there from that far back. That's not to be rude about the Portuguese driver, but you've got to be a nose ahead on the outside line under braking if you want to make that work, and he knows that. But instead what he's done is put Matt Strand under major pressure coming down the hill towards turn number 8, and Strand goes defensive there through the sharp left-hand right-angle corner, and Verdasco right now definitely making a good impression. But speaking of good impressions, as they all come down in towards the carousel, well, meanwhile, those who have left it, Rui Ferreira Almeida, this suddenly takes a new turn. As he makes way through the king, he's now trying to hold on to third place with Christian Karlsen and Matt Sparrow close behind. Sparrow definitely a damaged car, but Christian Karlsen and Almeida both in clean cars right now. And I think both fancy their chances here for the final step of the podium, albeit it could be more than that if the leaders make mistakes. But then again, anybody can make a mistake between now and the very end, because we are on lap number 9. Lap number 10 is just around the corner, and everybody has had an off so far. Nobody is innocent here at the Road America circuit. But as we can see, our battle for third building up. We jump on board with Christian Karlsen as he exits the final corner. Now on to 3 laps to go. And as he heads over the rise, well, the gap was 3 tenths out the final corner. It is closing little by little. And I think he fancies his chances here. But both drivers running a similar amount of rear wing. That's why Karlsen's gaining very slowly. They're both going for the downforce here. But you can see that Almeida goes defensive to the inside. Karlsen looking all the way around the outside. Goes for it. He's got the confidence. He's got the boldness under the brakes. And it's a lovely move there from Christian Karlsen all the way around the outside. And now the question will be, can Rui Ferreira Almeida find a way back past him as we now look for the rear of the leader of this group? And right now for turn number 3, he can't. But he sets this up. He gets the best possible exit. 1.5 tenths on exit. And he's got a very long stretch of road now. But Karlsen immediately go defensive here as they roar the way on down. It's going to be a battle of equal machinery. And it all comes down to who's the braver on the brakes here in towards turn number 5. And if you are Christian Karlsen, you've got to go for this. You've got to make yourself nice and wide. Slides a little bit deep, but Ferreira Almeida does not get it stopped on time, and as a result has to settle back in behind. So brilliant fighting, and Christian Karlsen does steal that move for a brief moment, but I don't think it's over yet. But meanwhile, we take a brief pause from all that playing out to see what exactly happened to Philip Hammer only moments ago, and here's a quick replay. So this was Hammer in the number 1, making his way out the final corner. Car slides loose once, twice. He tried to get under control. Oh, no, no, no. And that was Matt Sparrow going straight into the side of Philip Hammer. I think in the end, Sparrow expects Hammer to get it under control. And that's why Hammer picked up the damage and the secondary contact with a concrete slab on the outside of the circuit. Really consigned into what would be a trip to the pit lane there. And, well, the onboard from Philip Hammer will tell even more of a story. Getting the power down and fighting it, trying to use torque there to push the car out the corner and point it straight. But unfortunately, by the time he almost got it under control, well, the car snapped loose once again, and then it was Matt Sparrow who just added to the woe there. And from Sparrow's perspective, I can imagine he probably had to keep the throttle in, otherwise the rear of his own car would have let go there. So it's a very unfortunate incident, and that is why Sparrow's got the damage on his car, and Philip Hammer has had to come into the pit lane, and his race is definitely parked and locked into the pits for further notice. But as we come back to live racing, penultimate lap gets underway over the misfortune of one of the pole promotion esports cars. Well, Lewis Glanier, the other one out there right now, is happily moving forward. He sets the fastest lap of the race, a 2:08.8, as Gareth Higgins sets the personal best, a 2:09.0. But Higgins right now on course for a second place most definitely, but verily not going to have the opportunity there to be able to find a way to take victory unless Glanier has an absolute nightmare last couple of laps. Christian Karlsen, Rui Ferreira Almeida and Matt Sparrow, they fight over third still, and the clouds are really building here. In fact, visibility is dropping. I wouldn't be surprised we might see some raindrops on the final lap at this rate. If they come, well, we'll have to wait and see whether they completely change the focus of the race, as we change our focus here to the battle for 10th place between Oliver Clarke and Philip Schmitz as they make the way out of turn number 3, and as they do it still side by side here, with Clarke getting ahead by nose in the white and blue machine, as meanwhile we can see Schmitz, Gutzlav and Berger all together. But Schmitz now will be relegated down this order to a brief moment on the outside line, and Gutzlav there tucks in behind Clarke. As we can see there, Schmitz using all the road a bit more to try and make the corner, but it doesn't quite work out for him, and Gutzlav now on the inside up the hill. Gutzlav surely is going to have the opportunity to take this place. They scythe the way together, and in the end it is Gutzlav who moves up into 11th place. Brilliant bit of work there for Gutzlav as Philip Schmitz falls into 12th, and then Westenberger falls back into 13th place. Great fight, and I think there's going to be more of this, but until the very end, as Carl McGuinness has had a bit of a moment just in front of me. He's falling back towards this group after chasing after what was several drivers, including Matt Strand and also Francisco Verdasca. And what exactly happens to Carl McGuinness? Now, this was McGuinness in 7th place, chasing after Nicholas Stanev. Into the braking zone for turn number 5 they went. I get the feeling he's going to outbrake himself here. No, going to be a bit of contact between the two of them there. And, well, on a collision call, Stanev trying to point the car away from the apex slightly to give himself room to take the corner. McGuinness was trying to squeeze him as much as possible legally. I think Carl McGuinness right now, once again, finds himself on the receiving end of an instant, which I think you'd have a valid case to say it's not my fault. But then again, the other driver would have their argument as well. So therefore, it's definitely right now Carl McGuinness. He is 2 for 2 with miserable moments. But as we come back to your live racing, well, 1 lap remains. And as we see McGuinness make his way onto that final lap, there's your leader coming out of turn number 3. Lewis Glanier right now leading by 7 seconds almost over this man. Gareth Higgins, who right now continues to push on. And we've had a moment for Matt Mosby to see him have to tow to the pits. Christian Karlsen, meanwhile, has got ahead of Ferreira Almeida and also Matt Sparrell. And, well, Matt Sparrell's up in the 4th place. There's been a bit of a change there. And I do believe we've had a bit of a moment for Ferreira Almeida, which we'll try and catch if we can. But otherwise, we'll stay transfixed to your live racing now all the way to the very end of the race, as Christian Karlsen continues to try and hold on to the final spot of the podium here. And it's been a long time since we've seen Karlsen on the podium or challenging for one in these top splits. So therefore, we hope to see this all conclude quite happily for him, because we do love to see him up on the podium there. But Matt Sparrow on his debut would like to say otherwise than the Duckham's livery machine. And I believe that might be a tribute to the old Duckham's liveries seen on the Super Touring grids of the 1990s on the Ford Mondeos, if my memory serves me correctly. But from the past to the present, here's a change of position, and that is going to be Matt Strand up the inside of Francisco Verdasca, back into 7th place. And Strand right now trying to pick off the last pieces he can before he sees that checker flag. And he's doing a good job of it as they come on down. No rain falling, it should be pointed out, but definitely very ominous clouds out there. And I think the rain is just going to arrive a little bit too late in the day. But we will see as Westenberger chased after Gutslav with Philip Schmitz behind, and Oliver Clarke has started to break away from this group. So he's put himself quite safe in the hunt for that 10th place. But as our drivers make the way towards the very end, the very first one who will do so as he comes out of the final corner will for Lewis Glanier. Last time out of course, it was a 2nd place with Hayden Omamasi running off to victory. But here today, Lewis Glanier takes victory at Road America. He does survive the challenging conditions, and he brings it home for Pole Promotion Esports by 7.5 seconds over Gareth Higgins, who takes the run-up spot there for Bernard Sim Racing by RC. He returns to the podium once more. Christian Karlsen will then start to make his way home in 3rd place. He has got Matt Sparrow right behind him, but Sparrow does not have enough pace. And in the end, it will be Christian Karlsen who brings on home 3rd, ahead of Sparrow, with Ferreira Almeida on his debut, taking a 5th place there, ahead of Nicholas Stanev, who did brilliantly to finish 6th from 14th on the grid. Matt Strand makes it back into the top 10 once again, with a brilliant recovery effort there for 7th, ahead of Francisco Verdasca. And then we will have Carl McGuinness, who, despite a lot of misfortune, does take a top 10 in 9th, ahead of Oliver Clarke, who rounds off your top 10 ahead of Jan Gutslav, Westenberger and Philip Schmitz. And then we will have Max Angels taking 14th place there on his debut, the American driver, ahead of Yaroslav Tamiki, 15th in the end, but frustrated at 9. A top 5 was potential of the cards here today. Lee Bolden will come home in 16th there in what has been a solid drive, but one that did see him make his way to the gravel a couple of times. And then we will see Jakub Sawa bringing it home in 17th, just ahead of Bartosz Gwolinicka, with Josephine Becker there taking 19th place. And then last but not least, it is going to be on that lead lap, Taylor Wallace, who right now, well, he may not have had the happiest races out there, but to be fair, credit where it's due to Taylor. He's going to get that car home on the lead lap, and let's give him a round of applause as well. Give him a round of applause to anybody who finished this race, because they've all given it their all, and it has been a very tricky Road America circuit today to try and manage with the standing water and also the relatively cool conditions there. And well, as Wallace goes wide out the final corner, he will survive it, and he will be your 20th and last place finisher. But there he comes, ladies and gentlemen. His checker flag falls, and we'll talk about other 4 drivers of Matt Mosby, Philip Hammer, Maurizio Lamberto and Kelly Aguilar. They've not quite seen the finish line, but they have seen the pit lane instead with retirements. As Matt Sparrow, amongst many, gradually cools himself down here on his cool down lap through the kink, although it looks like, in fact, he's on a full hot lap here. I think he's very eager to make his way around and see what he can do to cool off after what's been a challenging race. But we do look to the scenic view, and with it, the provisional race results, subject, of course, to Eddie Stewart's inquiries. So 12 laps of racing in a rather treacherous set to the conditions day for week 8 Top Split broadcast here on Wednesday, the 5th November 2025 in the 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. And we saw in the end Luis Glanier take victory by 7.5 seconds over Gareth Higgins. But to be fair to the pole promotion esports driver, it was not all straightforward, with Higgins putting pressure on in the early stage of the race after a monster pole lap saw him take pole position, but Higgins was relegated back to second, and in a small mistake saw the gap open up between Glanier and Higgins, and that's the way it would stay. Christian Karlsen, well, he was the best of the rest, fighting hard and in the end being rewarded with a third place. Where many lost it, he did not, and managed to keep his head and keep his cool and make his way onto the podium. From the Norwegian driver, it was only 4 tenths back to Matt Sporell, who would argue he was on course for a potential podium in his battle with Philip Hammer, until Hammer got it wrong and Sporell ended up adding himself to the scene of the instant. Rui Ferreira Almeida finished in 5th place there, the Portuguese driver, with an absolutely brilliant effort on his debut, fighting hard and on course for a podium at one point, but Karlsen and Sporell too much for him to hold back, but still he'll learn from that experience, no doubt about it. Just ahead of Nicholas Stanev there, who very quickly made his way into the top 10. He wanted to be in the top 10 over the distance, and in the end earned himself that 6th place the hard way. From the Bulgarian driver, it was then the ice-cold racing powered by Maxim Racing's Matt Strand, who once again goes to show it's not about qualifying, it's about the race, and made his way into the top 10 with a 7th place finish. Francisco Verdasca finished in 8th place there on his debut, and in another sequence of events, he would have perhaps been in a top 5 finishing position, but today had to settle for 8th with some offs just costing him the time. Carl McGuinness, well, he had 2 major incidents over the race distance, but the pole sim racing driver doesn't know the word stop, and indeed did a brilliant job there to keep on going and recover to a 9th place, ahead of Oliver Clarke, who rounded off your top 10, and then best of the rest in 11th was Jan Gutzlaff ahead of Westenberger and Philip Schmidt in their brilliant freeway battle for the 11th place spot. Max Angles led a lonely 14th place finish in the end, 3 seconds ahead of Yaroslav Tamiki, and the Polish driver there absolutely frustrated after his instant earlier on in the race. Indeed, he was one of the candidates for a top 5 finish. Lee Bowden finished in 16th ahead of Jakub Salwa, with Bartosz Glowanika in 18th place ahead of Josephine Becker, and Taylor Warris, last but not least on the lead lap, finished in 20th there, with the Canadian driver definitely having a baptism by fire when it came to competing today in his first top split broadcasted race. But to be fair, good to see him make the checker flag. Commiserations, unfortunately, to the following drivers who did not make it to the finish. Matt Mosby, who was 2 laps down when he retired. Philip Hammer, 3 laps down from retirement. 7 laps down from Maurizio Lamberto, who in the end, after the contact with Carl McGuinness, then had a further incident which cost him dear for SART XMC, and therefore he'll be hoping for a much better day in the office next time out. And the same for Caleb Aguila, who retired on the open lap after what all went wrong for so many drivers in the gravel trap at Canada Corner at turn number 12, where Aguila came off the worst. So 24 starters, 20 finishers, all in the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen. And in the end, it was Luis Glanier who took home an absolutely brilliant victory ahead of Gareth Higgins and Christian Karlsen. But with that, as the circuit falls silent, it's time for us to wrap up. But not firstly, of course, without a word regarding our title sponsor, and that being CONSPIT. If you are looking to take your sim racing to the next level, then why not consider CONSPIT? As the pro driver's choice of sim racing hardware, CONSPIT offers one of the most comprehensive lines of hardware products to sim racers around the world. Whether you're in the market for wheelbases, steering wheels, pedals, peripherals, or rigs, CONSPIT's extensive experience in the motorsport industry means every one of their products is fine-tuned for success at the highest level. But do not just take our word for it. We're brand ambassadors including 2022 Grand Prix Macau GT Cup champion Luo Kaliu, 2022 Porsche Carrera Cup Asia champion Liu Ye, 2022 Chinese Touring Car Championship champion Rodolfo Avila, and 2023 GT World Challenge Asia GT3 AM Cup champions Climax Racing. You shall be in pole position for victory when you invest in CONSPIT's hardware. If you'd like to know more, be sure to head to conspit.com today. And that so concludes week 8 of our racing, but we've got plenty more weeks to come, and next time out we exchange the American countryside for the Australian countryside as we make our way to Mount Panorama's racing circuit, but you all know and love it as Bathurst, and there on Wednesday the 12th of November 2025, ladies and gentlemen, we will be deciphering who is the king or queen of the mountain. Come tune in then as we continue our series of top split broadcasts for this 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, but until then, that's all we've got time for today. We have been the Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember, to stay on track. Good night.